And right now, we are on another panel discussion of cloud and data panel discussion, which is on data management and a security enhancements for the cloud. Well, if you may have any questions for our panelists, we'd request you to type it in the Q&A tab on your screen during the course of the panel discussion. Well, we pass it to the moderator and our panelists at the end of the session. If time allows, they'll be taking it up or during the course of the session. So let's keep it engaging and let's ensure that this panel discussion is going to be fruitful for the attendees as well. Well, the data management and security enhancements for the cloud, we're looking at covering data interoperability and the modernizing of data-driven applications. We're looking at data ownership and privacy challenges, ease data complexity, providing a central access point and bringing greater data visibility. Also, we're looking at security techniques from both the software and the hardware aspects, cloud compliance with intelligent, context-aware AI, and enforcing segmentation and threat controls for workloads in the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS environments. So it's going to be this and beyond as well in the conversation coming up. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got our panelists. First up, Genalyn Macalinao, the policy lead, Cybersecurity Bureau, DICT. Well, Jen is the policy lead of the Cybersecurity Bureau of DICT, Republic of the Philippines, an information technology officer and a cybersecurity policy maker. She's mostly involved in the protection of the critical infrastructure. She's also one of the authors of Towards a Resilient Regional Cybersecurity Perspective and Challenges in the Southeast Asia, published in 2019. She was also a lead contributor to the National Cybersecurity Plan 2022, published in the May 2017. Also, we're joined by Angelo Aguirre, the Deputy Commissioner of the National Privacy Commission. Well, Leandro has obtained his Master of Laws from the Harvard Law School, and he went on admitted to the New York State Bar. He's also the member of Academia, wherein having taught various subjects in the University of Philippines College of Law since 2013. Well, he has a rich experience and expertise in legislation, serving as an advisor in the formulation and implementation of legislative agenda, including the bill that eventually became the Data Privacy Act of 2012. Well, we're also joined by Hierro, the director and the group head of technology and engineering Entrego. Well, Poi is responsible for the overall product and technology strategy and IT operations for the whole of Entrego and its subsidiaries. Previously, he had held several technology roles in the industry, from UX to software development to DevOps engineering to product management. Well, Mr. Hierro has been with the startups and Fortune 500 companies alike. And this entire conversation and panel is going to be moderated by Parag Diodhar, the Director, Information Security, Asia Pacific, VF Corporation. Well, Parag is a chartered accountant, certified information systems auditor from ISA, CA, US, and certified fraud examiner from the ACFE, US. Well, Parag has been over 20 years experience in enterprise risk management, specializing in cybersecurity, operational risk, business continuity, and fraud risk management. Well, he's also worked in leadership roles with multinational companies like the AXA Group, KPMG, Deutsche Bank, and the Mahindra British Telecom. So thank you so much to our panel for joining us today and being a part of this panel discussion. With this, I may pass it on to Parag to take it forward with his panel right now. I'd request all our panelists to kindly put the video button on now and unmute yourself, as it is now time to come on the main screen and the stage. Over to you, Parag.
Thanks, Bhavna. Thanks a lot for the introduction of the panel. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be on this panel with such eminent panelists here. We are going to talk about cloud data management and security. So as a background, most of the organizations, regardless of the size or industry, are on the digital transformation journey today. And they are looking to innovate faster, more securely, and get more efficiencies and meet their customer expectations. And for this, the digital transformation has been accelerated, and due to the global pandemic as well, and the need for making the remote workforce productive while balancing the available budgets and resources. So as part of this digital transformation, the organizations are also moving to cloud infrastructure, platforms, and services to evolve and also remain competitive. But organizations must keep in mind that adopting the cloud adds complexity through growing sets of data streams, applications, and services which they need to manage and secure as well. This is especially true considering that different parts of the organization can be at different stages in this cloud journey or the digital transformation journey. And if it is not done thoughtfully with a data strategy at its core, the adoption of cloud technology fueling the digital transformation can sometimes become a liability. In addition, there are various cloud solutions and products available, and choosing the right one for your business is not easy, especially with the number of regulations which are coming up, especially in the APAC region around data privacy and security. So to talk about data management and security enhancements for the cloud, we have these very knowledgeable, distinguished, and honorable panelists today with us who will help us navigate this cloud journey and share some of these best practices. And as Bhavna mentioned, towards the end of the panel, we will have some time for taking questions from the audience. So I would encourage all of you to raise any questions regarding data security management in the cloud through the chat window. So let's get started with this panel now. So, first of all, let me go to Leandro. And the first question for Leandro here is, what are some of the data ownership and privacy challenges organizations are facing while moving to the cloud?
Hi, Parag. Thank you for your question. I think we have to start with the idea of the accountability principle, where personal information controllers have to demonstrate their compliance with regulation such as the Data Privacy Act, even if the data is already in the hands of a personal information processor like a cloud provider. So with this in mind, it's important to determine exactly what you're getting from your cloud service provider and what they're providing you. The organization's ownership rights over the data must be firmly established in the service contract or service level agreements in order to enable some basis for trust and the privacy of data. Ideally, the contract should clearly state that the organization retains exclusive ownership over all its data, that the cloud provider acquires no rights or licenses through the agreement, and that the cloud provider does not acquire or may not claim any interest in the data. In addition to this, I think the shared responsibilities between the cloud providers and their customers should also be determined. These obligations and responsibilities are important, especially, again, given the accountability principle.
Thanks, Leandro. I think that was a great starting point. Especially having the contracts in place, making sure what roles and responsibilities the cloud service provider has, and what the customer has. That's really very important. Genalyn, do you want to add to this? You're on mute, Genalyn. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. So, in short, the foremost issues in cloud data security, aside from data privacy, would be data protection, data availability, data location, and there's also the issue of secure transmission. Uh, the security challenges, on the other hand, include threats. There's also data loss issues, service disruption. There's the chance of outside malicious attacks, and also multi-tenancy issues.
Right. Thanks, Genalyn. Yeah, you're right. There's so many things to look after or look at when you're adopting the cloud technologies. Poi, do you want to add to that? Anything else from your perspective?
Yeah, I think on the point of data integrity, confidentiality, availability, and privacy. So together with this, all of the data migration, or even if a certain organization is already on the cloud. This this is in many ways an exercise in risk management. So both qualitative and quantitative factors apply in this. So the risks must be carefully balanced against the available safeguards, both man-made and natural and expected benefits, and the especially on the organization that with the understanding that accountability for security remains with the org. Ensuring the integrity of data from transfer, storage, and retrieval is really one of the challenges NSA would face and will continue to face while protecting the rights of the data owners.
Yeah, I agree, Poi. I think the data ownership and the integrity part is definitely very important. And as you all mentioned, I think the responsibility is a shared responsibility between the customers as well as the various cloud service providers, whether it's a platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or software as a service, depending on what product or solutions are being chosen. It would differ for each of those. So all these challenges, keeping all these challenges in mind, and we'll talk about some of these challenges in greater details going forward. Let me start with another question here around, the data interoperability challenges and what kind of challenges are faced by organizations, because a lot of organizations have legacy applications, they are moving them to the cloud. And while moving to the cloud, there are solutions available like multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and moving data between these applications, the legacy applications and new applications across these different platforms, that brings around a lot of challenges as well. So let me ask Genalyn this question, on the data interoperability. What are the challenges what organizations face, and what best practices would you recommend to these organizations?
Yeah, you mentioned the use of legacy systems, and being from the government, this is a main challenge for government agencies, the adoption of the use of cloud. And also, it was only in 2017 that the Philippine government released a policy on the Philippine government's cloud first policy. It's the DICT Department Circular 002, issued in 2017, where it declared that it is the policy of the government to adopt a cloud-first approach, and for government departments and agencies to consider cloud computing solutions as a primary part of their infrastructure planning and procurement. And so, right now, the DICT is instrumental in the implementation of this policy and in helping out government agencies in adopting this cloud first policy. It is a challenge because of the legacy systems that has been in use, but the way we see it is there just needs to be guidelines and clear policies in place, so that specifically for government agencies, so that it will be easier for them to transition.
Interesting. No, it's good that the government is also looking into this and creating policies around cloud adoption and helping the organizations adopt the cloud more safely. Leandro, anything you want to add to this?
Yes, Parag. I think it's important that organizations who want to move to the cloud I think it's important for them to do a data classification so that they have a clear understanding how their data is governed, what the commensurate security policies are in place to protect their data both from the legacy application and as they move to the cloud. In addition to this, I think it's also important that they conduct a privacy impact assessment or risk assessment so that they're able to determine how the risks that are associated as their data moves from the legacy application to the cloud and vice versa, so that they'll be in a position to identify and remediate at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah, data classification definitely is really important. And yes. Poi, do you want to add to this on the interoperability challenges? Are there any challenges in the legacy application data being ported onto the new cloud applications, and what are the challenges in that? You're on mute, Poi.
So, like the word cloud itself, interoperability can mean different things to different people. No? One can mean the ability of applications to move from one environment to the next, like, for example, from an existing on-prem legacy architecture into cloud service providers, for instance, and for the applications to work exactly the same in both cases. Now, another might mean applications running in different cloud service providers, the multi cloud approach, being able to share information, which might require having a common set of interfaces. So, challenges with this is that basically it required shared processes, standards, both industry standards and the regulatory standards, APIs and containers, and data models across different environments to enable communication between the different application components. So, reliability, this is where the reliability, the performance, and security, which comes in as the primary enterprise concerns for interoperability in these different environments. And while reliability and performance are essential for maintaining peak system performance and business continuity, security definitely plays a crucial role in maintaining resilience and data integrity across different platforms.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, it's not just the security aspect, but business continuity aspect also is important in terms of reliability and performance of systems on the cloud when you're moving data or the systems into the cloud as well. Continuing with you, Poi, I think
Just to add,
yeah, yes, Andrew.
uh, yeah, I just wanted to add, just because, at least from what we've seen, a significant percentage, I think more than 70% of data breaches that we've seen are really due to employee error. So I think it's important also to invest in training your workforce in order to really understand the full array of technologies that are specific to each cloud provider. Because it might be that they're so used to the legacy applications that they don't understand exactly the risks associated with what they're doing now as they move to the cloud. And it's important that they are able to identify them at the earliest opportunity. They know who they can escalate to so that that can be addressed at the earliest time.
Definitely, definitely. I think no, the humans are considered the weakest link, and whatever technology you adopt, I think it's important to train all employees, all the people, all the users, and ensure they use the technology securely.
Yeah. Can I add to Yandro's statement as well? And that is very true that not every security risk comes from the storage provider itself. Like the devices that access different applications and especially data are also potential source of danger. Especially some companies now are embracing the bring your own device culture, no? And which certainly has its benefit. However, this means no that some more worker-owned devices can access the storage provider, which provides a big security risk if one of those devices happens to be a rogue device, and in the long run, it could spell bad news to the enterprise.
Yes, I agree, Poi, and no, not just the BYOD. I think if you look at the data breaches what have happened in the recent past, these data breaches point to poorly configured cloud storage as well, and that has caused a number of security breaches. So when it comes to storing confidential data or private data onto the cloud, what are the best practices you would recommend to the users?
So basically, we have this seven, sort of like a seven checklist, if you will, that every with regards to the security for data storage on the cloud needs to be considered. No? First, definitely, is data privacy. So whether if it's technical or non-technical data, we don't want anybody to access any data unless it allows them to. As we have our own standards that and controls that governs us, and also, how can we be sure no one would access it when we don't maintain the servers that it's stored on? So next would be the lack of control. So definitely we are going into the CSPs when we rely on the third party to store data, or for us, you're lifting a lot of responsibility of our shoulders. However, it has its own benefits, and but it's also a double-edged sword. And like for example, if something affects our storage provider, like outages or malware infections, that will directly impact access to the data. Another big one is the definitely the API and storage gateways. Some enterprises use cloud storage APIs or storage gateway to help them migrate, maintain their data into the cloud. So these tools act as a middleman between the user and the storage provider. They may help us, but we would also get into a point where standardization with regards to the security. We have the different standard, the SOC to being compliant, being compliant to ISO 2700. That are the ones that needs to be considered on the storing data on the cloud. Now that's on the technical, and also that it's also has its mirrored approach, wherein you have the framework for your organization on how to manage and use that data. So coming in from when accessing different systems, or even reviewing different applications, you have to conduct privacy risk assessment, the usage, the policies. So those policies and the guidelines are there to basically protect not only the company but also the actual data subject that the company works with.
Right, right, Boy. So yeah, definitely there are a lot of standards, security standards which are available. And continuing on the security aspect, I'd like to pose this question to Genalyn and Leandro as well. From a policy perspective, from a government policy perspective, do you know what kind of security requirements do you recommend for the cloud? Genalyn, you can go ahead first.
Yes. Yes, aside from data privacy, of course, there's the cybersecurity requirements as well. And part of the efforts of the government to ensure this is the issuance also of circulars on the cybersecurity policies for critical infrastructures, and that includes the government. So one circular would be the DICT Memorandum Circular 005, released also in 2017, where it has specific standards that are being mandated upon CIIs for adoption. And aside from that, the Cloud First policy also has a data classification model that needs to be adopted as well by government agencies. There is this data classification table where there are specific guidelines on what can be stored in the cloud, what can be stored offshore. So things like the data location are specified. It's clearly defined so that there's guidance for government agencies, because data classification is key in ensuring that what we put on the cloud is really, we define, it is the user that needs to define what security measures, or how secure we want our data to be. So it's not dependent on the provider. we set our security standards. And so these kinds of policies are essential, and not only the government, but actually the CIIs are also looking for guidance on how to employ this security in their usage of cloud computing.
Right. Thanks, Genalyn. Leandro, if you can add to this.
So just to emphasize again what Boy mentioned about authentication and access controls, that's very important. I just like to add that at least from our perspective in the National Privacy Commission, those authentication and access controls have to be documented. Otherwise, we'll have a hard time conducting investigation in the event that something happens, and we'll assume that if it's not documented, it's not there in the first place. As far as security standards, we have a general standard where we require reasonable and appropriate organizational, physical, and technical security measures that organizations must implement. And what these are will ultimately depend on what the industry best practices are. At minimum, the National Privacy Commission requires that all personal data that are digitally processed must be encrypted, whether at rest or in transit, and we recommend at minimum AES 256. But again, it will really depend on the best practices in your respective industries, because we assume that the industry standards would be more appropriate to follow rather than a government mandated standard, which may not be appropriate for certain industries.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I think Genalyn mentioned something about data localization as well. And apart from so obviously the authentication and storage security is important, but with the data localization requirements, if you look at the entire APAC region, not just Philippines, we are seeing a lot of data localization regulations coming into picture. And the nature of the cloud is such that most of the cloud service providers have common data centers or common cloud platforms, and data is stored in those platforms outside probably other countries. So how do companies get over this data localization challenge while adopting these different cloud services, whether it's a SaaS service or a PaaS service? And it's very difficult for companies to manage this data localization challenge. So any advice to the companies on how to go about that? Boy, you want to start on that? You're on mute, Boy.
Yeah, so data localization has definitely one of the biggest challenge that organization must consider now, specifically like for example here in the Philippines, there's limited or little availability zone for some of the cloud providers. So from what I actually like, we've also starting to deep dive in this, some of our teams have been considering to go into the new cloud-based offerings like data residency as a service to help store and process data within the country. And then there's also between this cloud-based platform, they don't replace our organization or own data store, but add an additional local repository for especially for those specifically regulated personal data. So pretty much looking closely at this, because we would want to make sure that our users' data are safe within the sovereignty of our country.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very important. But at the same time, there are other sort of solutions maybe available where you can anonymize the data or mask the data when you are storing it in other countries or other localizations. So, Leandro, are there any considerations from your side on data localization and how to manage that challenge?
Well, from perspective of data privacy, there's no requirement under the Data Privacy Act for data localization. I think Genalyn might be able to speak more to that when it comes to government data. But I guess to emphasize the idea of data classification, if you're working in a or operating in a country that has a data localization requirement, I think it's very important to understand what data will be required to be localized so that you can comply just with that particular portion and you can carve that out and not have all your the company information and customer information be subject to that requirement unnecessarily. From our perspective, I think we go back to this whole idea of the accountability principle and whether that's localized elsewhere. At the end of the day, the organization that's responsible for that has to put in place the necessary measures in order to still retain control and ownership over that information.
Yeah, I agree. I think control over data is definitely important. And Genalyn, from your policy perspective, do you have any data localization policy in place, and how would you advise the users about complying with that?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, there under the cloud first policy is a data classification model where the appropriate baseline controls and security protocols for safeguarding data, as well as the government agency, shall be guided by its classification. So, for example, there are four classifications, and one is highly sensitive government data. So, for this kind of data, uh, it can only be stored or processed in the cloud only when necessary, and it should be in a secure private cloud hosted in an on-premise infrastructure that is within the Philippine territory. Or it can be in other territory, but it should be a territory over which the Philippines exercises sovereignty or jurisdiction. So there are these classifications embedded in that policy, which serves as a guidance for the government agencies when moving to cloud computing. So it's the data classification model for each organization, whether from the government or from the private sector, is are really basic in ensuring data security.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. That's data security is of paramount importance when you're storing data in cloud, and data sovereignty also is extremely important. Um, Maybe going forward, do you think there could be any reciprocal arrangements with friendly nations or friendly governments where they have requisite controls? May not be the full sovereignty or the full jurisdiction, but there is a possibility of doing any reciprocal arrangements with nearby governments for data storage. Do you think this is a possibility going forward? Anyone? Poi?
But
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Genalyn, go ahead.
yeah, I'm considering the need for flexibility. It's something that can be explored without compromising, of course, the data sovereignty.
Right. Poi, you want to add to that?
Yeah, the agreement between the Republic of Singapore and our country also comes into mind, no? So there's this agreement on personal data protection between Singapore's PDPC and our commission. So those ones that really would also uh, drive the needle into having a more better working relationship when it comes to the data flow, cross-border data flows between friendly countries.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, that makes sense. As long as all the countries have the right policies and no requirements in place, then that could be looked at. Coming to probably the compliance challenges, there's a lot of compliance requirements also, for each of these countries. Apart from that, we also talked about some of the standards, and there are various cloud standards available. So to comply with these cloud standards, again, what are the steps the organizations who are newly migrating to the cloud? What are the what are the compliance requirements they should look at, and how they should go about managing these requirements? Would want to take that question? Leandro, you want to take this?
Sure. As of now, there's no specific issuance of the National Privacy Commission, like specifically related to cloud. But our Data Security and Technology Standards Division is in the process of looking at it. And as of now, they've initially recommended ISO IEC 27018 relating to information technology security techniques, the code of practice for protection of personally identifiable information, and public clouds acting as PII processors. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And while there's no official issuance yet, it's something that I think we will eventually recommend companies take a look at moving forward. Aside from that, again, I think it's important for companies, both on the controller and the processor side, to implement policies and procedures in order to manage security incidents that may arise relating to the cloud. I know I've been talking about policies and procedures, but for us, it's important that these things are documented more than anything else, because aside from the fact that it's documented, it's important also that they're being implemented on the ground, because something we've seen over and over again is you have documented policies on the one hand, but as it's being implemented, it's completely different. And I think we just have to make sure that those things are being implemented as they are documented.
Thanks, Leandro. I know this has been a really interesting conversation and a lot of new topics and new ideas coming here. I think everybody would have got a lot of understanding of how to go about managing the cloud security and data interoperability on the cloud. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and we have to be closing out here. So I'd like to thank all the panelists here for their interaction and for providing so much insight onto this topic. So thanks, Leandro, thanks, Genalyn, thanks, Poi, for joining us on the panel and providing your inputs here. Thanks a lot, and thanks. I'll hand it over back to Bhavna now.
Thank you so much, Parag. Thank you, Genalyn. Thank you, Poi, and thank you, Leandro. Well, what I figured in this entire panel discussion was it was so engaging, and the audience, the delegates, everybody had this continuous involvement from the audience as well, wherein they did keep messaging about how they felt about the entire panel discussion. So, just like to let you know that it was incredible from the side wherein definitely the delegates and the audience have benefited. So, once again, a big thank you, and thank you for joining us on the World Cloud Show on behalf of TrustCon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. We'll see you on the other side soon.